Hey everyone, it's Matt here with Nightrun Studio, and I'm working on Willard, a platforming RPG adventure where the 1980s gets a second chance. Well, sort of. You see, due to some strange shenanigans with the space-time continuum, the medieval world of Archaea has been overrun by the sentient equivalent of a Gen X high school computer lab. Floppy disks, 8 tracks, 2 monitors, all alive, all hostile. Willard doesn't know what's going on, or even what happened to his pants, but along the way, he'll recruit NPCs to join his resistance village, build it up, and defend it from the joystick-wielding minions of the Technopocalypse. Now, I promised in the last devlog that I'd have a playable demo by the end of summer, and I'm still working toward that. But I'll be honest, making a demo, it's not glamorous. Most of my time lately has been spent on bug fixes, tutorials, menus, saving, and integrating systems. It's important, but it's also really boring to try to tell you about it. I could show you my modular tutorial system that displays button prompts with color-coded text, but unless you're one of the 7 people in the world who geeks out over dynamic tooltips, that's probably not the story for today. Instead, I want to show you something that actually brought Willard to life over the past few weeks: my dialogue and cutscene system. I love old RPGs like Secret of Mana, Soul Blazer, and Chrono Trigger. Their technical limitations meant they couldn't waste words, so they told massive stories with just 12 to 16 words per dialogue box, and somehow they still broke your heart. In Unity, it's pretty easy to get basic dialogue going. You create a UI box, and then you add some text. You can punch out a simple script that references your text, create a spot to write new dialogue, and then hook it up so it displays whenever you press a button. In Unity, you just add your script, drag in your text, and then tell it what you want it to say. Now when you press a button, done. Obviously this has its limits. So I tried adding ScriptableObjects. These are reproducible scripts that allow me to hold entire conversations in a single object. With just a little tweak to my dialogue script, I can set it up so they take one of these scriptable objects and then advance through them using an index that goes up by 1 each time you press a button. That's definitely an evolution. Without too much extra work, we can update this to take in portrait sprites and speaker names, and suddenly things are really starting to look great. But what about player choice? Branching dialogue, emotions, name boxes, portraits? You can do it all with this system, but pretty soon you're nesting lists of scriptable objects inside of scriptable objects. And if you want to give the player more than one choice, now you're nesting those inside of other scriptable objects. I tried this, it just doesn't scale well. I read an estimate that Chrono Trigger had about 10,000 lines of dialogue. That's too much to be writing into little boxes in the Unity Inspector. I needed a better tool. So I've switched to using Ink, a narrative scripting language that's made for writers. With Ink, I can write branching dialogue without tiny Unity boxes. When I'm ready, I can test my flow in real time and see the whole conversation on one screen. I can also tag lines with info like emotion or speaker name. In Unity, my system parses those tags and displays the right portrait, name, and expression. It's fast, flexible, and it's a lot more fun to write in. I also wanted to add some flavor, like making actions show up in orange, NPC names in green, and items in blue. Along with that, I wanted to define a special font size for shouting versus whispering. Instead of hard-coding every instance, I built a style manager. Now when I write a line in Ink, I can wrap a word in a tag like danger, or action, or shout, and the game handles the styling. And if I decide later that purple should be a different shade of purple, I just update the style manager. The tags stay clean and Unity updates everything for me in-game. Next, I created a global variable system to keep track of important changes the player makes to the world. So if you fix a bridge and then go back and talk to Burn the Bridge guy, his dialogue actually changes. This isn't just branching, it's reactive storytelling, and it's already starting to make the world of Archaea feel alive. But this isn't a visual novel. I don't want my characters to just stand around talking. I want actual cutscenes, animations, zooms, sound effects, but scalable. I experimented with Unity's timeline system first. This works great for animation and camera work. It's what I used to create the animation I showed at the start of this video. I can create an animation for a robot, and then drag it into the timeline. Then I can trigger sound effects exactly where I want them and layer in as many of both as my heart desires. However, I found this system didn't work great for triggering custom script logic, so I built my own modular cutscene system on top of it. Using ScriptableObjects, I created reusable actions like zoom to player, walk right 2 units, play line from ink, or wait 1 second. Now, when I create a new cutscene, I can just pick a trigger, drag in my pre-made actions, and hit play. Here's an example. I've made a few cutscenes this way already, and as I design more custom actions, the process is getting smoother and more powerful each time. So, with dialogue and cutscenes working, most of the last 6 weeks have been bug fixing. At the end of June, I let some of my high school programming students test an early build of my demo. I gave them a tiny 3-scene prototype, and they spent hours trying to break it. Mission accomplished. They gave me pages of bug reports, controls that felt clunky, inconsistent fall speeds, UI quirks, the player climbing inside of mountains, you name it. Here's my task board. The green are fixed, the white are still haunting me. After drowning in bugs for 2 weeks, I was one null reference away from turning my laptop into kindling. I needed a creative win, so I dove into some menu art. I pictured Willard, standing on a rocky crag, Mount Erdrich looming like an overdue college essay. Actually, I think I just pictured Caspar Friedrich's Wanderer above the Sea of Fog. Admittedly, Nintendo already beat me to the punch with this one, but I thought I'd take my own stab at it. With some cliffs and clouds in place around the hero, I cranked up my paintbrush to 8 pixels and started outlining. I feel like this gives it a painterly style that plays to my strengths as someone who doesn't have a lot of strengths when it comes to the artistic side of things. I filled in the image's vector art style and added a little light and shade. I had a bit of a problem trying to get the crag Willard was standing on just right, so I ghosted Friedrich's rock into the scene, giving it the same treatment as my other environment pieces. Stealing? I like to think of it more as a gothic romantic Easter egg. At this point, I had a pretty good looking still life image, but I wanted my cover art to feel more dynamic. I punched out a 4-frame animation to show Willard's cloak blowing in the wind. I sliced him up and animated it in Unity. I gave the clouds some conveyor belt treatment, and suddenly the whole thing has the impression of a never-ending sea of clouds. So next I added a title, and since it kind of disappeared against the background, I cut the mountain crag right into it, and then animated a fade in and out. At this point it was starting to look pretty decent, but I felt like it got old fast. Once you'd seen about 5 seconds, you'd kinda seen the whole thing. So I added a sun. Its elliptical orbit cost me a late night bag of pretzels and an existential crisis to perfect, but now it arcs from west to east, syncing a 2D color gradient that shifts from dawn pink to dusk purple. And there you have it, Willard's title screen. Equal parts obsession and caffeine. My next goal will be convincing players not to mash start so fast they miss the show. So, with the summer halfway gone and most of the game-breaking bugs out of the way, here's where I'm at. Dialogue system in, cutscenes are working, save system, tutorials, all major systems, they're talking to each other. I've got 4 scenes designed and mostly working, and I'm still hoping to get a limited demo ready for testers before the end of summer. Maybe that's ambitious. I still need sound, music, menus. Okay, it's definitely ambitious, but I've come too far not to try. If you liked what you saw, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, or just yell at me in the comments. Until next time, this is Matt with Nightrun Studio. Cheers.